Okay, good morning all. For this part of our lecture, we'll try to go through with some details on bitumen emulsion and cutback. So here one thing I want to mention that because the topic is too detailed, so we'll not try to go into too deep in empirical details of different tests. So we'll just try to look on the fundamentals that why this is required, why this is being done. And this will try to learn some things on bitumen emulsion part and cutback part. So our today's talk will be basically uh, will be based on the different IS codes which got latest revision, especially the polymer modified specification and rubber modified specifications. Also some discussion on emulsion part and small discussion on the cutback part. So I will just want you people to go through with these codes in detail if you want to get more benefited from this talk. Okay, so asphalt binder, as we all know that we obtain asphalt binder from the distillation of crude oil, and as the heaviest product from the crude oil, we get bitumen residue or asphalt binder. So basically this bitumen residue will further cooked or will further processed in order to get our PAMing bitumens. In chemical elemental composition, if you want to say what we have in the asphalt binder, so basically most of the part in a asphalt binder or in a bitumen is composed of carbon around 80 to 90%. Then next we have hydrogen, that is around 10% of the material. Then we have sulfur around 1 to 5%, and then different traces of nitrogen, oxygen, or maybe some heavy metals also. That percentage needs to be less than 1%. If we see the molecular composition of asphalt binder, so basically the molecules can be divided in four different categories. This analysis is known as SARA analysis based on what different components we have. So molecular wise, we may have saturates, aromatic resins, and asphaltenes. So that's why S, A, R, and A give the name SARA. Uh, I'm not giving too much detail of this analysis, but if you want to study more, there is a ASTM D2001. You can go through that gives the details on 2007 that gives the detail of these SARA analysis. So basically, if you do absorption chromatography, or if you do or separate the components by using N-heptane, basically the asphalt can be divided into two parts, asphaltenes and maltenes. The maltenes can further be divided into three parts, that's saturate and resin and aromatics. Now, in order to use the binder for any construction purpose, first we need to liquefy it. Now, in order to liquefy it, the most conventional way to liquefy asphalt binder is to heat it. Whenever we use this methodology or heating, the asphalt binder will get whatever the type of mixture or whatever type of asphalt that we known as popularly as a hot mix asphalt. So most of the asphalt material we use fall in this category, whether it's your BC mixtures or any other kind of mixture, they falls in this category. Apart from the neat binder what we have without any processing, sometimes we may have some admixture used with the asphalt binder that gives us a modified asphalt binder. Now this modification have different types of benefit. They may have some environmental benefit, they may have some economical benefit, and may have some technological benefit. Modification could be of different type. It could be of chemical modification like adding phosphorus or maybe adding some oxides or different types of things. Or maybe even cooking would be a chemical modification of the asphalt. The next type of modification is adding some types of polymer into it. That is the most used category of modification, and we have code on it. And today we'll have discussion concentrated on this polymer modification of the binder. The next type of modification, if you use some crumb rubber or rubber kind of thing in the binder. So what advantages we have if we do modify our binders as compared to the neat binder we have. So by modification, one can improve the pavement performance, and that could be in terms of reducing the rutting susceptibility, reducing the fatigue cracking, improved low temperature cracking resistance, reducing top-down cracking, and improve durability of the asphalt binder. Some studies has shown that while using modified asphalt binder, the pavement life is increased significantly. Now, in order to characterize the asphalt binder, we need to first look what are the different conditions the asphalt binder will go through in its life. So, first is when the temperature is very low. When the temperature is very low, the asphalt binder will behave like an elastic solid. Now, this actually resembles the minimum service temperature of the pavement, and here asphalt or your mixture can undergo thermal cracking. If you increase the temperature around average service temperature, maybe around 25 degrees Celsius, the material will behave like a viscoelastic solid. And here in this case, you may have fatigue cracking or alligator cracking. If you increase the temperature further, the material will behave like a viscous liquid. And here, this resembles a maximum service temperature where you may have rutting or shoving. So this will be around 60 degrees Celsius. If you further increase the temperature, the asphalt will behave like a true liquid, and this will be the instance of mixing and compaction. Here a drain down could happen, or tender mix could happen. So we need to take care at the elevated temperature. Second thing, what different aging condition binder can go through. So first, when you have obtained your binder, that means no aging or zero aging condition. Second, short-term aged, that will be the condition when you have mixed or when you are compacting your mixture. And so that short-term aging condition can be simulated by using equipment called thin film oven. So this is essentially an oven where you will put your asphalt binder in some pans, and you will put them inside the oven, and you will run the test at 160 degrees Celsius for 5 hours of time. Now in this duration, the asphalt binder will age, and that simulate the short-term aging. This simulation actually resembles the time when you mix and compact. Same thing can be simulated by more advanced set, that is a RTFOD. Now here the test time can be decreased significantly. Here a rotating circular metal carriage is used, and the sample is put in this kind of specialized glass bottle or jar. Now this jar is being kept here in this carriage, and then this carriage or whole carriage is rotated. Same time, the temperature here is around 160 degrees Celsius, and you will flow some hot air also inside these bottles. Now the combined effect of these all things will be in aging of the binder. And now, because these bottles are big, we are putting around 33 grams of sample here. So that will give a very thin film on the surface of this bottle. And that's why this name thin film came into the picture. And rolling, because this carriage will be continuously in the rolling position. Now rolling will help to maintain the thin film inside this bottle. The third aging condition will be in the service life of the pavement over the years, maybe around after 10 years of time or maybe more. So that can be simulated by using the pressure aging vessel, which is essentially a kind of pressure cooker, you can say. So here we'll put our binder in the small sample pan, and we'll put the binder at the temperature 90 to 100 degrees Celsius at some pressure. So the effect of the pressure will be its boiling point will be elevated, and that's how binder can be heated more. And this will simulate the condition of around 10 year or in service life aging of the binder. Now, one more thing which binder can go or binder is vulnerable, that is about time, or you can say rate of loading. So what happens if the rate of loading or the time for which you have loaded the binder is more, then the same load can cause more damage or more strain into the binder. So these are all the variable conditions which we are going to come across throughout your binder service life. So that's why these are the conditions in which we will try to characterize our binder. So just to link all the testing, so we have minimum service temperature around 100 degrees, around 0 degrees Celsius. We have average temperature around 25 degrees Celsius. We have maximum service temperature around 60 degrees Celsius. And we have mixing and compaction temperature maybe around 165, 135 similarly. So in these temperatures, your binder will behave like an elastic solid, viscoelastic solid, viscous liquid, and true liquid. So all the tests what we will conducting will keep in mind of these temperature ranges. So first test, very basic test to get indirect measurement of binder viscosity or the binder's consistency is the penetration test. Conventionally, we will take a load of 100 gram through a standard needle and will put on the surface of the binder and will apply this load for a duration of 5 seconds. Now, in this duration, the needle will penetrate into your binder. The amount of penetration will give you the penetration value, and that's being represented in terms of 1/10 of millimeter. The second test is the flash point, which is a safety test, which indicates at what temperature your binder will catch fire or flashes will come. Third test, ductility, which you will test to get the binder's coatability. So in this standard briquette will be used. You will put your sample inside the briquette, allow it to cool down at the room temperature, and then you will load it to a standard ductility machine. Here you will try to extract the binder sample at the rate of 5 centimeter per minute till the binder ruptures. Next important parameter is the first fundamental parameter for what I'm discussing is the absolute viscosity. So to define the absolute viscosity, a fluid viscosity will be 1 poise if you put the fluids between two standard plates, and if you apply a unit stress to the upper plate, the upper plate will slide with a distance equal to the thickness of the plates or the thickness of the material you have used between the plates. This viscosity or absolute viscosity can be tested by using different tubes, viscometers. There are some popularly used tubes there that are Asphalt Institute tubes and Canon Manning tubes. These tubes basically works on the capillary action. So whatever the binder you will load here, that will cross these standard bulbs. Now time required to cross this bulbs is directly proportional to the viscosity of the material. So in order to test, we'll put our sample here in this arm, and then we will apply a vacuum from the next arm, and we'll note down the time required to cross these bulbs. Now, time required to cross these bulbs will be recorded and multiplied by the calibration constant of these bulbs will give you the absolute viscosity. The similar type of arrangement is for kinematic viscosity. So the kinematic viscosity is absolute viscosity upon the fluid's density. This is the more realistic parameter because whenever you are mixing or you're compacting, the binder will undergo a kinematic viscosity or flow due to its density. That can be measured by using cross viscometers or Cannon-Fesky tube. This is the picture of the tube. Here you have this bulb where you will load your sample. Now loading technique in this tube will be a little bit different. You need to take the binder sample in a beaker. Then you need to invert this edge of the tube inside the beaker and need to apply a section from this edge. By that section, the binder will rise, and that how you will put the sample inside this tube. Now you need to keep the tube at 135 degrees Celsius inside the viscosity bath, and then you need to remove the cork from this edge. Now at 135 degrees Celsius, the binder available here will start flowing due to the gravity or due to its density. Now time required to cross this point and this point, then this point to this point, these two time, T1 and T2 will be recorded. Now the calibration constant of these bulbs multiplied by these times will give you the kinematic viscosity. The next parameter is the softening point. So this is the famous ring ball operators test. So here we have a standard ring in which you will put your binder sample and then you will load through metal balls of around 3.5 grams. Here you will start heating it from 5 degrees Celsius onward with some standard heating grade. And you will note down the temperature when this ball touches this lower datum or this lower platform. This time indicates when your at what temperature, a temperature will be recorded, and this temperature actually indicates when your binder will attain certain specific viscosity. So these all tests, based on these all test result, you can grade your binder as per ISC 73. So these are all tests. So according to the standard, there could be 4 different types of or grades of paving bitumen possible. This is for unmodified binder. It could be VG10, VG20, VG30, VG40. This grading is done based on the viscosity or absolute viscosity tested at 60 degrees Celsius. So these are the viscosity ranges for this binder to be graded and specific grades. Apart from these viscosity, a binder need to satisfy other different tests in order to be graded, whether it's VG 10, 20 or 30. So if you want to have a binder VG20, that binder need to satisfy this viscosity, of course, and other than this viscosity, it need to satisfy the penetration, the kinematic viscosity criteria, the flash point, solubility, softening point, and certain test which is being done on the short-term yeast sample, which is a viscosity ratio and ductility. Now, we have seen all the tests what we have done at different temperature or at different aging labels for viscosity grading. Now, what's the problem? Is everything is fine or still we have some problem with viscosity grading? Now, viscosity grading was introduced keeping in mind the problem associated with the penetration grading system. Now, if we have introduced the viscosity grading, again, there are certain issues. Now, issues we have fixed in the penetration grading system, we have only one point, that is at 25 degrees Celsius. But now in viscosity graded, we have done the grading at 60 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature or the higher temperature of the pavement. And based on this, we have graded our binder. Now, other test what we have done is the penetration, that is at 25 degrees Celsius, and then at 135 degrees Celsius by measuring its kinematic viscosity. But again, there is a scope. We don't have any test or don't have any characterization done at lower temperature, which resembles the cold or winter. Advantages of this grading system based on the fundamental property, that is the viscosity or absolute viscosity, done at maximum service temperature at 60 degrees Celsius, includes a criteria of high and average temperature, that's the penetration, and kinematic viscosity. But there are some issues associated with this grading system. That means the instruments are expensive. We cannot help it because the grading system we are moving ahead of this viscosity grading, the equipments related to that grading system are more expensive. Doesn't specify or address long-term aging. So we have done all the testing till the short-term aging here. We don't have any testing or characterization done for a long-term aged binder. And this does not consider any low temperature criteria or any characterization at lower temperature is not being done. One more problem associated with this type of grading system is here we have taken an objective, that is our temperature, that at 60 degrees Celsius, what values of maybe viscosity or any parameter we are getting. But when we want to apply something in the field, the objective should be this much of viscosity will get at what temperature. That's how we can assign the binder to different zones. Like for an example, here in Indore, let's suppose we have a temperature of around 45 degrees Celsius. So it's important to have a binder which satisfies this criteria at 45 degrees Celsius rather than having a binder which gives a different performance criteria at 60 degrees Celsius. The same thing is being adopted partially in the new code. So what I mean to say, we need to fix a performance criteria and we can check at what temperature these performance criteria can be fulfilled by a particular binder. So this is the idea used in the SuperPay, and now our modified polymer modified binder codes also using a similar kind of idea. So new approach basically go by adding more simulating conditions for binders aging. So all three types of aging condition in the new approach need to be taken up, which is being taken up in the case of polymer modified code. Also at more performance criteria. So for the test resembling more about rutting and cracking need to taken up, and that's being taken up in the new code. We'll see in our further discussion. So some other tests which is being taken up in the polymer modified codes are high temperature viscosity. So that is being done by using a viscometer or a rotating viscometer, you can say. So that here you have a spindle or a geometric element, and the binder sample will be put it on a cylinder or a measuring cylinder. In this spindle will be lowered and it will be rotated with a constant speed, maybe 20 RPM or maybe anything else. In order to rotate this spindle inside the measuring cylinder or inside that cylinder, we require some standard amount of torque. Now that torque required is proportional to the viscosity of the binder. That's how this rotational viscometer gives you the value of viscosity. One more equipment or one more fundamental parameter is being tested here by using a dynamic shear rheometer. In dynamic shear rheometer, two-plate geometry will be used to load the sample by applying sinusoidal load. So this is a picture of dynamic shear rheometer. This is actually your fixed plate or lower plate, and this is the moving plate. And this is how you will pour your sample in a mold or silicon mold. So testing or DSR operates by giving a sinusoidal load to your asphalt sample. So here in this picture, if you load it by sinusoidal force, the spindle will move from A to B first, which gives me this curve, and then from B to A, which gives me the one complete sinusoidal curve, and then A to C and C to A, which gives me the other part of sinusoidal curve. So this will become a full sine wave. Now, when you have added or applied the load to your sample by giving a sinusoidal load, you will get some strain originated. Now, if your material is elastic, the moment you give your stress, the same moment the strain will come up. That means the delta or the time lag between stress and strain is 0. But if the material is viscous material, then there will be some amount of time lag. If the and if the material belongs to viscoelastic material category, that gap or that angle or that lag will be in between 0 and 90 degrees. Based on this, we can define the parameter complex modulus. If you have applied a stress, the difference between the maximum and minimum stress divided by the maximum and minimum strain will give you the complex modulus. And the amount of lag between these two curves will give you the phase angle. Now, complex modulus, because the complex value will have two different components. So one will be the real and one will be the imaginary part that essentially represent the storage and viscous component of the asphalt binder. Based on this measurement, we have two different innovative parameters suggested, that is G star by sine delta, which is a rutting parameter. So this parameter need to be related at higher temperature. The higher G star means the greater resistance to rutting, and lower delta means more elastic, that means lesser rutting. Consider the rutting as the stress control cyclic loadic phenomena. It can be shown that rutting potential is inversely proportional to G star by sine delta. Similar kind of parameter suggested for the fatigue, that is G star sine delta. The lower value of G star sine delta means the lower potential of fatigue cracking. Higher G star means the greater chances of cracking, and higher delta means the less elastic asphalt binder. So DSR testing need to be first done at no age sample. So here you apply the load and measure the parameter G star sine delta of unaged binder that must exceed the value of 1 kPa at the high service temperature. The next test is at the for neat binder is separation test. In separation test, you will keep your binder in aluminum tubes. You will put inside the oven at some elevated temperature for a standard time, and then you will freeze it. After taking out sample from the freeze, a sample from the top and bottom portion will be taken, and different tests can be done. The difference between these two tests will indicate the amount of material which is separated from the sample. The one more test, the elastic recovery test, similar to what equipment we have seen in the case of ductility test. Here a specified bracket is used to put the sample, and then the sample will be loaded inside the ductility machine, and it will be spreaded 10 centimeter apart, and then this sample will be cut in two pieces. Then 1 hour times is allowed for the recovery. After 1 hour, the sample will be moved back to join these two pieces. The difference between the 10 and now the original position and the final position is taken, and that's give you the percentage of the length recovered from this binder. The next test to characterize the low temperature or the low temperature cracking of the asphalt binder is frost breaking point. Here a metal sheet is taken. In that metal sheet, carefully a even thickness film of asphalt binder is created, and then that sheet will be fitted in this frost equipment. Now at lower temperatures, we will start flexing these edges. We will start flexing these metal plate. Now due to this flexing and lower temperature, the asphalt binder will start cracking. The temperature at which we see the first crack, that temperature will be taken as frost breaking point. Let's see what are the different tests to be conducted on the short-term age sample. So on the short-term age sample, the parameter G star sine delta will be measured using DSR testing. Now for this RTA40 age sample, the value of this parameter should be greater than 2.2 kPa. The next type of testing is the MSCR testing. Now this MSCR test is being done by giving a creep load or creep stress to the sample in DSR. So here a creep load will be given for a 1 second of time. Then a recovery period of 9 second time is given. Now around 10 cycles of this 1 kilopascal load will be given. Then load will be increased to 3.2 kPa, and again 10 cycles will be given following the sequence of 1 second loading and 9 seconds of unloading time. Now when we will load the sample will strain. When the load is removed and recovery period is given, the sample or the strain will dissipate. The sample will try to recover its original position. Now, if you repeatedly give the same load, this strain or this will keep on adding, and ultimately you will have some accumulated strain. The parameter JNR is defined by using the unrecovered strain upon whatever the load is being applied. We have already done the DSR testing by evaluating the parameter G star sine delta and G star by sine delta. Then why this test is needed? So the idea behind using this test, whatever the test we have conducted till now, does not have any characterization where we can see the effect of load. So here two loads is being used. So this gives us a characterization of the binder or the data regarding the binder performance when you have different load. Also, the amount of load we have used when we have tested the sample for G star sine delta and G star by sine delta, it was quite less. Now at that less loading, it's rare to see the effect of cross-linking of the polymer modified binder. So in order to activate that cross-linking, we need to use a higher load for the polymer modified binder, and that's how this higher loads come into the picture to characterize that cross-linking binder more efficiently. Then pressurized or long-term ACE sample. Let's see what tests need to be done in this sample. So in this sample, you need to test the G star sine delta. And here for this PAB ACE binder, the value should be less than 6000 kPa at the mean of high and low temperature to prevent any type of fatigue cracking. Now let's see how this test will be summarized to grade the binder as per IS 15462. So as per the code, there are 5 different types of PMB modified binders. These binders being graded or in terms of these two temperatures. So essentially, if I write PMB 64 by 6410, so this temperature gives me the high temperature, and this is the lower temperature range of for the binder. Now this range is coming from the DSR and MSCR tests. So let's see what other test needs to be done. So softening point need to be satisfied by all the binder which needs to be graded for a particular grade. Then elastic recovery, flash point, viscosity, the complex modulus, G star sine delta, the phase angle value, the separation test, and frost breaking point. The lower temperature is coming from the frost breaking point, and the higher temperature is coming from this G star by sine delta value. Now let's see what different tests need to be conducted on the RTF40 sample. So on RTF40 sample, we need to conduct the test loss in mass, then complex modulus divided by sine delta, that G star by sine delta, then the MSCR test. So these tests need to be considered. Then let's see what test needs to be done on PAB ACE sample. So again on PAB ACE sample, G star sine delta fatigue parameter need to be evaluated. So these are the different tests which we need to do or whose value will be required in order to grade a binder in a particular grade as per IS 15462. Now, if you have graded your binder in a particular grade as per this code, let's suppose I've graded my binder, I've got a grade of 60 and 10. Now, there is a concept of grade bumping now taken in this polymer modified binder grading system. Now, let's try to understand what this grade bumping is. Before that, let's see how this grade will be decided for a particular reason. What will be the grade you will use? So that will be dependent upon the maximum average and the lower temperature of the region. Now the maximum average temperature can be estimated by this expression. This is the empirical expression, and this is the function of the average maximum pavement temperature at 20 mm below, and this will be depend upon the high air temperature and the latitude. So suppose if I want to calculate the average pavement temperature at 20 mm below, so I will require the high air temperature at that region and its latitude. These data can be obtained from the meteorological department. So once you have this higher value, that value will be taken to determine which binder you need to use in that particular area depending upon its higher temperature. Now the minimum temperature or the winter temperature will be taken as the minimum temperature for that region. So that will give you the two indication, A, that means for higher temperature, and B, for minimum temperature. So let's suppose I have an area where I have a temperature of, let's suppose 63, and let's suppose I have a temperature of -9. So based on these two temperatures, I need to decide which binder I need to use. Now, apart from this, what happens if you have done the test and determine your binder grading is this, but there will be any effect of what type of or what amount of traffic we have in that area? So in order to apply or in order to get the effect of traffic conditions in the grading system, this grade bumping is being suggested. Now, if I have tested my binder, I found out that this is my grade 6410 based on this JNR criteria is less than 4.5 kPa. So this will be for the standard traffic condition. Now I found my traffic condition is not a standard, but it's the heavy traffic condition. So again, I need to run the test to get the value of JNR and a new temperature. But the code suggests that instead of doing that, you can just go a grade up. So this is the concept of grade bumping. If you have more heavy traffic, you may have one more grade up, and similarly. Now, previously, before the revision of 2019, this code, which gives the gradation of polymer modified binder, have two components. One to give this PMB grading, and second to give the CRMB or NRMB gradings. But now, in 2019 revision, these two codes are split into two different codes. One to suggest the grading of polymer modified binders, and second to suggest the grading of rubber modified binders. If you remember, there was a special publication from IRC side also, that's IRC SP53, which also combines these two grading in a single code. And the tests were also similar for CRMB and PMB binders. But now here the tests suggested for polymer modified binder are different, and tests suggested for the crumb rubber modified binder or the rubber modified binder are more or less similar to what we have seen in case of our viscosity grading. Only 2-3 tests are being suggested more. They are related to this stability and elastic recovery. Rest all tests are similar to what we have seen in the case of viscosity grading. Now, there could be point that why these tests, which we have done in the case of polymer modified binder, cannot be taken up for the crumb rubber modified binder for its grading. Now, the point is, we have a lot of discussion in research communities that why to keep the crumb rubber and polymer modified binder in India, especially in the same bucket. The problem is the type of modifier or the crumb rubber modified we use in the India is not similar to what is being used in the USA. Also in USA, the use of crumb rubber modified binder is very limited. It's limited to around 3-4 states only. But here in India, we are using the less quality additive material. They are mostly the truck tires, which already having around 90, 20, even more than 20% of the natural rubber in it. Now, that actually reduces the quality of the crumb rubber modified binders. And this polymer modified binder should not be compared with the crumb rubber modified binder. And in my opinion, the use of this crumb rubber modified binder need to be decreased. Also, because there is a very less quality control when you are producing the vehicle tires. So that gives us a very vulnerable quality of polymer modified binder. Also, the stability and working with modified this crumb rubber modified binder is difficult, which gives us a kind of mixture where you need to put more stresses on the quality control side and you need to invest more on the quality control issues. Let's see what are the different tests to grade a binder for the as per this 17079 to be a natural rubber modified binder. So penetration test, softening point, flash point, elastic recovery, separation, viscosity, and then based on thin film movement, loss in mass, change in softening points, reduction in penetration, and elastic recovery. Now, based on this test, you can grade your binder in two types. That is, only two grade exists. That is NRMB 70 and NRMB 40. Similar to this, we have crumb rubber modifieds. So there are two grades of crumb rubber modifieds, CRMB 55 and CRMB 60. A binder to be graded in CRMB 55 and 60 need to satisfy these different criteria of penetration, softening point, flash point, elastic recovery. Then for this, that means crumb rubber modified, a complex modulus criteria is being taken up. Then all conventional tests, separation, viscosity, then test on the thin film woven residue. So here, same test, loss in mass, change in softening point, reduction in penetration, elastic recovery, and again, the complex modulus SG star by sine delta. So these are all the tests which we will require to grade our binder in the grade of CRMB 55 or CRMB 60. So these are two different grades of CRMB and we have two different grades of natural rubber modified binder. Although the use of natural rubber modified binder is very limited, mostly you will see the CRMB to be CRMB are more popular in field. So till now, whatever we have seen, we have heated our binder to liquefy it in order to make it workable or in order to make our pavement. Now the next technology could be to dissolve this binder with some types of solvent to liquefy it or to make it workable to make mixture or to make pavement. So if you use any kind of solvent, that essentially which need to be hydrocarbon oil or need to be some component of the crude oil because like will dissolve like. So that will give you the cutback. Now based on what oil you have used, the cutbacks can be divided into the three types: the rapid curing, the medium curing, and slow curing. When you have asphalt cement thin with gasoline oil or naphtha, you will get rapid curing oil because the rate of evaporation in case of this light fraction oil will be high. You use kerosene, which is relatively thicker than gasoline and naphtha, you will get a medium curing cutback. If you use more heavier oil, that's a diesel or gas oil, so here the rate of evaporation will be slow as compared to kerosene and gasoline. That will give you a slow curing cutback. For characterizing cutback, there are different type of tests suggested. Essentially, we'll see those set of tests in emulsion, and we have already seen these most of the tests in our previous discussion in our past slides. So that's why I'm not going on tests. Let's see what different tests are. So kinematic viscosity need to be satisfied. Flash point, distillate, that means after distillation, the residue obtained on after distillation, so what fraction you got, and then few tests run on the residue. These tests are viscosity, ductility, solubility, and water content. Sorry, solubility and then water content you need to test by the mass. Based on these different tests, 4 different grades of rapid curing cutback is suggested. This 70 or 250 or 80 is coming from the kinematic viscosity. So if you have a grade RC70, that indicates you need to have a minimum viscosity or minimum kinematic viscosity for the cutback is 70 centi-stoke. Similarly, we have requirement for medium curing emulsion. Here also this 30 or 70 is an indication of its kinematic viscosity. That means if you have MC30, its kinematic viscosity needs to be minimum 30. Then whole these tests are mostly same what we have already seen. Similarly, you have a requirement for slow curing emulsion. Here also the same test or similar kind of test being suggested. Now we have seen two types of techniques to liquefy the asphalt, one to heat, one to dissolve it with some solvent. There could be third type of technique to liquefy it, that is to suspend it with water. That is essentially a technique of emulsion. So in emulsion, two liquids or components with one dispersed continuously through the other. The immiscible material are held together in the stable suspension with the use of some additive or that is known as surfactants. The major example of this kind of emulsion is whatever the emulsion paint you are using, the mayonnaise, even the blood. Here I am presenting two pictures. Here, if you can see here in this picture, you will see certain particles which where this emulsion, these particles are showing that this is not stable, and because of instability, further if you wait for some time, the emulsion will be separated. So there are two types of liquid. Water becomes different material. Now here your oil become a different material. Now in order to facilitate the quick mixing, we need to use add, that is a surfactant. Now what surfactant do? So surfactant could impart some charge on your oil, or here that oil will be asphalt, small asphalt globules. That charge make the emulsion stable, and also that charge impart the characteristics of setting of the emulsion or give the characteristics of which gives the setting time of these emulsions. The emulsifier have a typical structure where one end is a water loving end and the second end is a oil loving end. So tall edge or the tall part of that surfactant will be oil loving, which will attach to the asphalt binder, and the second edge will be polar in nature, that will attach to the water. If we represent it in a model, so if I have a asphalt, the surfactant will attach with the asphalt, one head with the asphalt and other head with the water. Now this emulsifier or this additives will give some or will impart some charges to the emulsion. Those charges could be positive or negative. So if I have a positive charge, I will have cationic emulsion. If I have negative charge, I will have anionic emulsion. Now, because all the globules now of asphalt binder have the same charges, so they will repel each other, and that's how it will stabilize the emulsion. Now, we should never mix a cationic and anionic emulsion, otherwise we will see the immediate break or immediate breakage. Now, based on what amount of charge or the type of surfactant used, that will decide what is the amount of charges on the surface of globules. If we have very less amount of charge, these type of emulsion will coalesce quickly, or these balls can join or coalesce quickly. So that's why the name suggested rapid. So rapidly these balls can be coalesce if we have very less amount of charge in the surface of asphalt globules. Now, if it is intermediate, the speed of setting or collision will be medium. And if we have very high amount of charges on the surface of these globules, we'll see the speed of collision will be least. Let's see what is the naming criteria for this emulsion. So there are two different components. One is prefix and suffix in any emulsion nomenclature. So there are different types of terms. If we have RS, that is a rapid setting, SS slow setting, QS quick setting, MS medium setting, HFRS, that is high float rapid setting. The RS is the same here. C, if we add, that will represent the cationic. AE, if we add, that will represent the anionic emulsion. We can have some suffix like 90, 50, or 300. That actually indicates its penetration range. If we have suffix as H, that gives its indication of penetration value. That is the hard grade bitumen or the high penetration, or hard penetration emulsion, or it's being formulated from a binder which is having hard penetration value. Or we may have PM or L, which is modified with polymer or latex. So here you may have an emulsion produced from a polymer modified binder, or may have some addition of modifier, maybe polymer or latex or rubber in the emulsion. That's how you can get a modified emulsion as well. So a suffix PM or L give indication of that. There could be written 1 or 2. So 1 indicates the low viscosity and 2 indicates the high viscosity. Let's see. So if I have this grade of emulsion, so here HRF indicates the high float value, RS indicates the rapid setting emulsion, and 2 value indicates that high viscosity binder is being used. Now, if I have CRS2P, that means C indicates for cationic, RS indicates for rapid setting, and 2 indicates for high viscosity, and P for polymer modified. Similarly, if I have CSS1H, that means C means it's representing its particle charge, it's cationic, SS means a slow setting, and then we have 1H, 1 indicates the low viscosity, and H hard asphalt. How to characterize? So there are different set of tests which can be conducted on the emulsion. They are to test the composition. We can go for a particle charge test, density, or distillation. So particle charge will give you indication whether the emulsion is positive or negative charge, or it's a cationic or anionic. We are not going in depth about these tests. There could be different set of tests to test the storage and handling capabilities, or storage and handling performance. There can be storage stability, sieve analysis, and Seibold viscosity, reactivity, that how quick they will break if they are added with the aggregates, and some residues tests, some tests on the residue obtained from the emulser. They could be float test, penetration, or some parameter tested from the DSR. Now, as per IS 8887-2018, let's see what are the different grades of emulsion we have. Here I'm just representing or just using the cationic emulsion. I'm not discussing the anionic emulsion. Similarly, the anionic emulsions are also graded. So we have 4 different grades of emulsion: the RS1, RS2, MS, and SS, which is rapid setting, medium setting, and slow setting. Now, in order to grade these emulsion in these grades, or grade any emulsion in these grades, we need to satisfy these different tests, which are residue on 600 micron sieve, viscosity at 25 and 50 degrees Celsius temperature. Now, this viscosity is not measured by using any capillary viscometer. It's the Seibold viscometer viscosity. Then coagulation of the emulsion at low temperature, storage stability, particle charge, and the coating ability and water resistance. Few more tests, they are stability to mixing with cement, immiscibility, and The test on residue could be residue by evaporation, penetration, ductility, its solubility, distillation, and then the water content. So these are different tests which need to be performed, and in order to get or in order to grade a particular type of emulsion in a grade. So that's it from my side.